All right, it looks like we've got a good chunk of attendees in the Zoom room, so we'll go ahead and get started. I'm Nicole Baxter, Communications Officer for the City of Citrus Heights, and we want to thank everyone who's attended this evening for our webinar on accessory dwelling units in Citrus Heights. To start, I thought I'd just kick us off with a few Zoom logistics. So if you're attending live this evening, we encourage you to use the Q&A function and ask us your questions. We'll be taking them during breaks throughout the presentation as well as at the end. If you're on your mobile device this evening, you may need to tap the screen in order to see the buttons. So you'll look for the one that has two little speech bubbles and says Q&A. We'll also be launching polls throughout the evening. So when you see those pop up, please weigh in and engage. We would love to hear from you. And last but not least, if you're not able to stick around, don't worry. We'll have a recording of this webinar up on the city's website as soon as possible. And you can access that recording as well as awesome resources at citrusheights.net/ADU Central. So now I think I'd like to introduce our expert panel this evening, and we'll go ahead and get started. So here is the panel of experts that will be talking to us tonight. First, we have Greg Anderson. He's the chief building official for the city of Citrus Heights. Greg has worked in the building industry for over 38 years. He was self-employed as a general contractor for 13 years and has worked with the city in the building division for the last 21 years. Greg has served 4 years on the executive board of the Sacramento Valley Association of Building Officials and is a member of the Code Development Committee. He is a true expert, and we are so honored to have his leadership in both building standards and safety and customer service as a part of our city's team. Tonight, he'll be talking to the group about the permit and planning review process for various ADU options and more. Next, we have Sean Jackson. He's a California licensed engineer and the president of Jackson and Sands Engineering. Sean's company specializes in the structural analysis of residential homes and ADUs, and his team created the city's permit-ready ADU plans that we're offering to residents free of charge. Sean will be discussing that PRADU program tonight, which is so exciting. And we have Allie Bermudez. She's the associate planner for the city of Citrus Heights and will be our host for the rest of the evening's webinar. If you've been interested in ADUs in Citrus Heights for a while, chances are you've already worked with Allie or talked with her, and you know how lucky we are to have her on the city's team and as lead on this project. Allison has worked in the city's planning division since 2000. She started her planning career serving as administrative support for the City of Roseville's Planning Commission, and she found that the planning field really complemented the building and construction experience she acquired from her 17-year career in management for a large buildings retailer prior to her public service. And then we have Eric Singer. He's an assistant planner for the city of Citrus Heights. He'll be fielding all of our questions this evening, discussing characteristics of ADUs, design standards, and more. He's been with the city since 2019. And he joined us after working with the city of San Rafael and the city of Lafayette. And he's had the pleasure of working on several exciting projects throughout the city, including residential and development and commercial. And most recently, he completed the city's housing element update for the 2021-2029 housing cycle. So that's our expert panel for the evening, and I think we're ready to dive into the presentation. One more reminder to please use your Q&A button to ask us your questions. We'll take as many as we can. So with that, take it away, Allison.
Thank you, Nicole, and thank you everybody for joining us tonight. We're all very excited to be here to share a new program as well as general information on accessory dwelling units. So tonight we're going to cover several topics. First of all, we're going to talk about what is an accessory dwelling unit, or an ADU as we'll refer to them the rest of the evening, and why an ADU is valuable and important to properties. We'll go over the regulations of ADUs. We'll talk about the permit process and then introduce our permit ready program. All throughout this evening at different points, we'll stop for questions and answers. And as mentioned, Eric and Casey are on the line answering questions as you enter them into the Q&A. And then we'll verbally answer any that are pretty common that we're getting repeated often. So, all right, let's get right into it. So first of all, what is an ADU or an accessory dwelling unit? We used to refer to them, or commonly called, a granny unit, a granny flat, in-law suite, in-law quarters. So they were known by a lot of different names. Back in 2017, the state became involved in the regulations of ADUs, which we'll get into in just a moment, but they started coining the term ADU for accessory dwelling unit. So it's the more recognizable name now and referred to as an accessory dwelling unit or an ADU. ADUs are an independent living unit, provide independent living facilities on an existing residential property. So there is a main unit or a primary home, and then there is a separate living unit on the same property that provides independent living facilities. ADUs are generally smaller than the primary house. They're going to range from about 150 square feet and can go all the way up to 1,200 square feet. ADUs come in many different forms, as you can see by these graphics here. The orange, little orange part of the home being the accessory dwelling unit. So first, there's a detached ADU. So this is going to be a freestanding unit that's not attached to the house. It's one that is separate. There's an attached style, which means that they share a common wall. So it's going to have a common wall shared with the primary home. You can convert interior space into an ADU. So this could be an attic, a basement, if we happen to have any, or any space inside the home can be converted to an ADU. You can make it a garage apartment, so you can convert your existing garage into an ADU. You can add living space above an existing garage. And then there's also a specialty type of accessory dwelling unit called a junior ADU, and we'll get into that a little bit later as well, as those are very specific. So those are different types of accessory dwelling unit options of how an ADU is created. And how we got here on ADUs and why they've really become popular. We were just talking before we started how most of our phone calls, especially over the past few months, are on accessory dwelling units. Many people are investigating this option, and like, why are they all of a sudden becoming popular? Well, a lot of it had to do with California's need for housing, and the legislature saw this as a need. We all know there's an affordable housing crisis that's been going on. So the legislature saw the need for a way to get, how can we bring in more affordable housing for California? So in 2017, they took the first steps, and they came down with some mandates that cities and counties must follow on accessory dwelling units. Prior to 2017, accessory dwelling units could be placed on properties, but there were some very strict restrictions. They may have needed a use permit. They had specific parking requirements. Lots had to be of a certain size, a certain zone. So 2017 saw the first mandates come through that eliminated many of those requirements. I'm happy to say that in 2017, Citrus Heights, we took that and we took it to its limit, and we removed most of the restrictions early on in 2017, even before we were required, because we did see this also as a way to help our community. In 2020, the legislature continued to see a need to improve or to remove some hurdles on ADUs. They also added additional mandates that are now followed in accessory dwelling units. And significantly, the one was the elimination of impact fees. And so we will get into the fee side of it a little bit later, but that was a significant change in 2020 that is now in effect for accessory dwelling units. As I mentioned, in 2017, the city really took these new regulations to heart, and we started changing our codes, and we have seen a significant increase. So it has worked. Since 2017, we've actually permitted 32 accessory dwelling units, which may or may not seem like a lot to you, but if you think about, I went back to records, and since 1997, when we became a city, we had permitted under 10. So from 1997 until about 2017, we had less than 10 accessory dwelling units in the city. But just since 2017, we've done 32. So it's a significant rise. And then just 10 and 10 alone in 2021. So the popularity has continued to grow, and I do expect this number of permits to continue to increase. All right, so before we move into the next section on why an ADU is important and what it can do for you, I'm just going to ask my colleagues if there's been any questions come up that we need to address before we move on. Casey or Eric?
We have not received any questions yet. Don't be shy. Please feel free to ask us any questions that come to mind. Even if they seem off topic, we can always help to point you in the right direction.
One question was, will the recording be available? And yes, it will be available, hopefully by the end of the week on the ADU Central website.
Yes, perfect. Yeah, so anyone that has to hop off early and can't stay with us for the entire thing, no worries, you'll be at the full recording at the end. All right, so why an ADU? What are the benefits of an ADU? Well, as you can imagine, they do provide this additional living space on a residential property, and this independent living space, which is really so important. And we can really achieve that without acquiring the land. As we know, the acquisition of land to build a home is quite expensive. So an ADU eliminates the need to purchase land because it's already owned. Yet you are able to add another living structure where someone can live independently without having to depend on the main house for cooking or bathing. They can live independently in their own structure. They are meeting this form of affordable housing. So is an intent, which is why the legislature saw this as important, is it is a way to provide affordable housing for family, for the community, for parents, for grandparents. So this multi-generational housing theories are really becoming important through ADUs. And then on the flip side, it can be an income generator. So you can build an ADU in order to provide living unit for family or to rent it out and help with your income or your future needs for retirement. With the changes in the law since 2017, all residential properties are eligible for an ADU. As I've mentioned, prior to 2017, you had to have very specific identity of parcels. It had to be a certain size, a certain zoning. That's no longer the case. Residential properties, all properties are eligible for an accessory dwelling unit. And also I mentioned the impact of the removal of the impact fees. It's been a great hurdle removed for the construction. Construction costs are expensive enough, but the collection of impact fees have been eliminated on certain sized ADUs, and we'll get into those specifics as we move through the presentation. I like to call this the 3 F's of an ADU: family, flexibility, and financial. So I like this graphic here. It really shows how an ADU can benefit and can meet these criteria. So if you think about, as an example, in 2010, we had a family with a young baby that had a home. That's the light green structure where they lived. Mom and dad needed to downsize or move in to be close to them. So they built this ADU in the back and provided independent living space for mom and dad. The family grew. They ended up using both the accessory unit and the main house as their family continued to grow. And then over time, we're looking forward into 2040, that family has now aged and they need to downsize. So they have moved into the back unit and their children have now grown and have their own family and then moved into the larger unit. So it really shows how this type of living structure can be multi-generational and can benefit not only their needs now, but for generations to come. It's flexible, allows you to move from the main unit to the back unit. And then there is a financial income stream with that unit, should you need to rent it out or whatever those options in the future come. So I think that's a great graphic to show really the true benefits of an accessory dwelling unit and how they can help our community. All right, so we have our first poll, and please, these are some choices for you, but please answer and you can select as many as you want. But we'd like to know, what is your interest in an ADU? Why are you interested? Is it for the rental income? Is it housing for a family member? Are you desiring to help out the community by providing some sort of affordable housing? Do you have someone with special needs or want to rent it out to someone with special needs? Maybe you're planning for your retirement. Maybe you're downsizing and you want to move into the ADU and rent out your main house, or are you looking to just increase your property values? Select your best choice, and it can be one or more. And we'll see what kind of results we have here.
Awesome. We're going to give everyone a couple more seconds to weigh in on the poll. I do see we have one call-in listener, so apologies. I don't think the poll will be available to you, but you are more than welcome to watch a recording where you can see a report out of the poll results by the end of the week, as Casey mentioned. So it looks like we've still got a few responses rolling in. Give everyone like 5 more seconds.
Nicole and Allison, we do have a few questions, but I'm going to hold those until we look a little further down the presentation because they're more attuned to some of the later slides. So we'll let everyone know. We'll get to those in a little bit.
Sounds good. Looks like we've got some results here, and it looks like a majority are housing for a family member. And honestly, that is what I expected. Over the past 3 to 4 years, every year we send out a survey to all of our community members who have built an accessory dwelling unit, and we ask them questions, and we want to know, who is that ADU serving? Are you using it for a rental, or are you using it for a family member? And 90% or 95% of those that come back, the ADUs are for a family member. So that is the answer that I sort of expected. So don't feel alone. I think it's a great way to bring in family. I like to call it bring in family to live close, but not too close. So it is a great way. So thank you for participating in that poll. All right, now we're going to hop into the next section on regulations, kind of the meat of the accessory dwelling units. And any questions that we need to address now, or we're holding those? We're good?
We have some questions that we are going to be answering a little later on in the presentation here. Some of them will be addressed via some of our slides, but yeah.
Great, thank you. All right. So let's talk about regulations of an ADU. And Eric, I'm going to rely on you to go through this, but talk to us about accessory dwelling units, their characteristics, and what makes them different from my house or a house.
Sure thing. Thanks, Allie. So obviously, as you mentioned earlier, an ADU is typically smaller than the primary home. It's a fully contained living unit, so you have to have a kitchen, a bath, and some type of a sleeping and a living space. They have a minimum requirement for size of 150 square feet and a maximum size requirement of 1,200 square feet, or I should say size limit of 1,200 square feet. They cannot be used for short-term rentals. So these are units that have to be rented longer than 30 days. Unfortunately, no Airbnb, VRBO, anything of that nature. Generally, they are stick-built. However, you can do a modular or a manufactured unit for an ADU. That's a fairly common question that we receive on a practically a weekly basis. But one of the restrictions is that it cannot be a tiny home, quote unquote tiny home, which is typically a movable home, something on wheels, or something that's RV rated. And finally, an ADU cannot be sold separately from the main home. So it can be rented out separately. However, because it's a separate living unit on the same parcel, it cannot be sold separately.
Great, thank you. All right, and so I assume there's some very specific standards that an ADU has to meet, and Eric, I'll let you go over these.
There are very specific standards. A lot of these the city has adopted preemptively before the state actually enacted them to kind of help ease the development of ADUs. So one of the biggest questions is always, where can I put the ADU on my property? And that has to do with the setbacks on your property. So they're not allowed within your front yard setback. Typically, that's the first 20 to 25 feet of your property measured from the front property line. Most often, they're in the rear of the property behind the main home. And in that case, you only have to maintain a 4-foot setback from both your side and your rear property lines. And those are typically demarcated by a fence line. They're not always 100% accurate, but that's the benchmark or the posts by which most people will use to measure their setback lines. The other big question that we get a lot of the time is how tall can your ADU be? So specifically for a detached ADU, it can be up to 16 feet in height. When it's an attached ADU or when it's part of the main home, it has the same height limit as the main home, which in Citrus Heights is 30 feet. Another very key element of an ADU is that it must have direct exterior access. So even if an ADU is attached to the main home, you still have to provide a means of entry and exit separate from the main home. You can't only access it by entering through the main house. Size limits is another big consideration, especially for properties that might be a little smaller and you're trying to figure out how to best situate this on the property. So there's two different ways we measure size limit. If the ADU is attached to the main home or is a part of the main home, it can be up to 60% of the total square footage of the main home. Of course, that caps out at the 1,200 square foot limit, as I mentioned earlier. And with a detached unit, that limit again is 1,200 square feet. Lot coverage only applies if the ADU is greater than 800 square feet in size. And this is a big consideration for a lot of properties. So if you're worried that you may not have enough room on your property to fit an ADU, or that you would be going over your allowable lot coverage, which in some cases may be 50%, other cases may be 30% of your total lot area that can be covered by a structure, if you're under 800 square feet, you're actually going to be exempt from that standard. Now, there are a few restrictions that come into play when it comes to the placement of windows on the ADU. So if you're going to be placing the ADU closer than 10 feet to an adjacent residence, so one of your neighbor's homes, we may have some considerations about where you place those windows so that you don't have kind of a direct line of sight into a neighbor's home, all in the name of trying to protect privacy for both parties. And finally, there is only one ADU allowed per parcel. We'll get into it in a second here about junior ADUs, but in terms of a standard ADU, there is only one allowed per parcel in addition to the main home.
Eric, we did have one question on lot coverage. They asked if you could expand on what that means and how you calculate that.
Absolutely. So typically lot coverage is the amount of square footage of your lot that can be covered by a structure. So that includes a house, a shed, a garage, anything of that nature, basically 4 walls and a roof. Most homes in Citrus Heights have anywhere from 30% of your lot allowed to be covered by those structures, up to, in some cases, 50% of your lot can be covered by those structures. So hopefully that helps to clarify what that lot coverage standard means. So I guess maybe to put it into some simple math, if you have a 5,000 square foot lot and your lot coverage is 50%, that means that 2,500 square feet of your lot can be covered by a home, an ADU, a garage, a barn, a shed, a gazebo, whatever kind of structure that you can think of.
Great, thank you. Let's talk a little bit expand also on the 60%. I just want to make sure that people understand that calculation. Can you walk us through calculating the 60% of the main unit and how that's done?
Absolutely. So again, just for the sake of simplicity, let's say you have 1,000 square foot home currently, and you want to add an ADU to the existing footprint. So you want it to be an attached ADU. That means that you can have up to 600 square feet for the ADU, in addition to the 1,000 square feet of the home. Does that help to clarify it?
I think so. So you take the size of the main home, its square footage, and 60% of that additional can be added for an accessory dwelling unit. So 1,000 square foot
Exactly.
home could have an attached ADU up to 600 square feet. And that only applies for attached units. Detached units, there's no calculation.
Exactly. Detached units, there is no percentage of the main home that you have to calculate. A detached unit just has a simple cap of 1,200 square feet.
Great, thank you. Got to know your math to do this, don't you?
It helps.
Okay, so let's talk about junior accessory dwelling units.
So a junior accessory dwelling unit is a specialty type of ADU. These can be a little bit more complicated than a regular ADU, but once we walk through it, it's pretty clear the distinction between the two. So first and foremost, a junior ADU can only be created through converting existing space within the primary home. So a JADU can't simply just be added to the home like a regular ADU can. It has to be the conversion of existing space like a master bedroom or another bedroom within the home. They are limited in size to 500 square feet. And another key consideration here is that either the main home or the JADU has to be occupied by the owner of the property. So you cannot create a JADU out of your home unless you are the owner of that home and you live there as well. It also requires an efficiency kitchen, and we can get into a little bit more detail on exactly what an efficiency kitchen is with Greg. He can go into a little bit more detail on that. But again, same as a regular ADU, a separate entrance is required. So you can't only access the JADU from within the home. There has to be a door to the outside directly from the JADU. Finally, as I mentioned earlier, this is where it gets a little bit more complicated in terms of the number of ADUs allowed on a property, but you are allowed per current state law to have both an ADU as well as a JADU on your property. So you could add an attached ADU to your home, but then you could also convert an existing room within your home to act as a JADU. So in total, technically, you could have 3 separate living units on the same property.
Eric, we had a question related to, could you convert the garage to count that as a junior ADU?
Yes, you can, as long as, again, it stays under that 500 square foot maximum. Additionally, it just has to have that efficiency kitchen as well as that separate entrance. We have had quite a few questions about converting existing garages. That seems to be one of the #1 areas that most homeowners tend to convert into either an ADU or a JADU. So if there are specific questions just regarding the conversion of, that space into habitable space, I'm sure those are things that Greg can answer as well.
And then talk about the deed restriction for the JADU.
So the deed restriction has to do with the fact that your JADU is required to, basically the deed restriction that you're signing is acknowledging that the JADU has that square foot maximum, it has the owner occupancy requirement, and ultimately that JADU cannot be sold separately from the main home. So before you ever convert your, let's say your master bedroom into a JADU, you would have to sign and have that deed restriction recorded.
We had one more junior ADU question about whether they or not they have to have a bathroom, or can they share the bathroom in the main house?
So that is one distinct difference between a JADU and a regular ADU. A regular ADU has to have its own bathroom. A JADU can share a bathroom with the main home. The only difference there is, again, just the requirement for an efficiency kitchen.
Great, thank you. Okay, any other questions that we have on junior accessory dwelling units or the regulations that we've talked about?
That looks like it's it on JADUs. We have a lot on construction related questions, but I know that's coming soon.
Okay, great. All right, so now we'll talk a little bit about the process. So on how to go through the preparation for an ADU. So I'll show you this little graphic here. Sorry. So there's some steps. So the first one being you need to evaluate your site. So given the information that you gather from us and through different resources, you want to look at your site and choose the best fit. You're going to go through some pre-design work. You're going to think about the project, start thinking about financing, start thinking about how it's going to be built, start talking to contractors, architects, designers, or all the people in the trades industry to kind of get a good feel for the project and how what's available is best for what your intentions are. And then once you have kind of that groundwork and laid, you have a good site in mind, you understand what you're up against as far as the regulations and that, yes, it's going to work and I'm going to hire a designer. Then you start working towards your design and you start your plan preparation, which is your construction details. Once those are all gathered, then you submit them to the city for plan review. They go through the building department to ensure that the project will meet all the energy efficiency codes, the construction codes, and all of the regulations that we require for residential units. At the completion of plan review, you're issued a permit, you begin your construction, and then at the end of construction, you move in. So some steps along the way. I think the important pieces that really make the best project or the site evaluation in your pre-work. The more energy and effort that's put into that makes those other points come much easier and a lot less stress involved along the way. So site evaluation, some of the key points on that is you want to really look at your property. You know, what kind of conditions exist on the property that you have? Do you have trees? Do you have easements? Are you near a creek? Might you have flood zone? What conflicts may exist on or near your property that are going to dictate where the best location is for the ADU? So evaluate your property, visualize it, do the best that you can to determine the site is adequate. For easements, that's an important factor. Eric talked about the setback requirements being 4 foot, which are very minimal setbacks. But on the flip side of that, many properties have easements. And so you have to accommodate those easements as well. So they may or may not be larger than 4 feet. So you'll have to meet the larger of those too. So you can find out easements. The best way to do is get out your title report. You receive that when you purchased your property. Read through that title report, look at what's listed there. Most properties have some sort of easements. They could be for drainage, they could be for access, they could be what we call a public utility easement, but they will all be listed in your title report. So get familiar with those. If you need help with those or understanding what they might be, we're happy to help you. You can reach out to the planning department and we can also help you identify any easements because you do have to accommodate those when you start evaluating your site to see what kind of space you have. Because figuring out that is going to help you with their pre-design work. How much space do you have available? What size unit is going to work? What size unit is going to fit your needs? Do you need something maybe that starts out small? Maybe it's a studio. Maybe in the future, as more people need to use it, you can add on to it, make it larger. Kind of just think about, in the end, how is this unit going to benefit you, your family, and then your future? Start working on your budget and your construction method. Are you going to have it built, stick built, as we mentioned? That would mean built from ground up. Are you going to investigate using a modular home, maybe something that's built in a factory that's pre-built? So just kind of start looking at those avenues and deciding what's best for you. If you're going to build it, you're going to start with your design work, which is consulting with an architect, a designer, an engineer, contractors, or tradespeople that are familiar with accessory dwelling units and construction. Something to consider at this point, which we'll talk about in detail a little bit, is our Permit Ready program and how that will benefit you and your project. You'll create your plans, you'll submit it for plan review, your permit issuance, and then you can begin construction. All right, we got another poll here I'd love to launch. Thanks, Nicole. So what stage are you in your ADU planning? Are you still just thinking about it? Are you evaluating your site? Have you met with industry professionals, contractor, and architect? Have you done any of that kind of reach out so far? Is your design underway and it's nearly complete? Or maybe you've submitted to us and you're ready to start construction or already constructing. We'd love to hear what stage our audience is tonight.
Great. Votes are rolling in. We'll give everyone like another 15 seconds to weigh in on what stage you're at in your ADU planning. It's totally okay if you're just thinking about it.
Great, just thinking about it. Not a surprise. This is a big project. There's a lot to think about. There's a lot of information, and it's, you know, an investment. It's investment not only in your property, it's a financial investment in the future. So it is, there's a lot to think about. So you have taken a great first step by joining in this webinar. This is certainly not the only resource I would hope that you would reach out to. There's all kinds of resources available, but I'm really glad to hear that you're doing your due diligence. It's an important part of the project. Okay. All right. So we have done our site evaluation. We've done our design work. We've got our plans ready. We're ready to submit to the city for our permit. So first of all, I'd like to introduce Greg again, and happy to have him with us tonight. Greg, as we mentioned, is our chief building official, and he is our key point person on the permit process. So Greg, thank you for joining us, and walk us through ADUs, which ones require permit, and then the steps that one will be seeing as they go through the permit process.
Sure thing. Great. Thank you, Allison. So permits for ADUs. Do all ADUs require a permit? Yes, all ADUs do require a permit, regardless if you're converting an existing portion of your house or a garage, or you're building a detached ADU. Even if it's an ADU that you're converting an old detached garage or shed, they all require permits. The permit process, obviously with the permit ready ADUs, is going to be quite a bit different because a lot of the legwork has been done. Steps for the permit process, obviously the first thing is your site plan would have to be developed, and that is after you've done your pre-planning. One of the things I would like to point out in the site evaluation that a lot of people are not aware of, we do have properties and citrus heights that are considerably deeper than 150 feet in depth. And if you're proposing to put a detached ADU in the back of your property, and it just so happens that it may be more than 150 feet, or any portion of that structure may be more than 150 feet from your street frontage, that may be something to consider, because that may require a certificate of release from the fire department, which means they would require that you have a fire access road getting back to that ADU. And with that said, a lot of our homes, the way they're placed on the property, you may not have enough room. I believe they require 20-foot wide or 16 to 20-foot wide pathway from the street frontage back to the ADU. And if you do not have that kind of room on the side of your primary dwelling, you may want to look at trying to adjust or pull that ADU, that proposed ADU, forward a little bit to get out of that requirement if you can. So site development with a pre-approved ADU, you've already got the plans, the construction details, the supporting documentation pretty much is already done. It's pre-approved. That legwork is done. If that is the option you choose to go with the PRADU, then you would have to come up with a site plan, which is going to be very site specific of your property, showing exactly where you propose to put this ADU and also showing the required setbacks to comply with zoning. Preparing the construction documents. Again, if you decide to go with the PRADU, that is done. If you decide to do this on your own, you can attempt to do this as owner builder, but more often than not, the most common is people would contract with a design professional. I would highly recommend that just for the sake of saving time and professionalism. If this isn't something that you're used to doing and you're not real fluent with the codes and construction design, I would recommend going with a design professional. The problem that we see is going back and forth in the plan review process. This can really complicate things and extend the overall time that you're in the review process. Our typical review in Citrus Heights, first review is 10 business days for first comments, and it'd be 5 business days for subsequent reviews or revisions. So every time you submit, if there is anything at all that we have to comment on, we would return those correction comments to you. It would go back for corrections, and when you resubmit, it starts over again. So you're another week out, another week out, another week out. And that is usually happens because not all the information is on the plans and documents that we require. Some of these ADUs, they sound, they're small in size, a junior ADU, so they're pretty small. You're converting an existing portion of the house, but there is a lot of code requirements that we have to comply with that if you're not familiar with it, you're gonna get hung up on it. We have a lot of energy standards that are changing year after year. There's the green energy standards that are changing. So you have to be familiar with all these things. It's sometimes not as simple as it looks to get the design in to comply with all the codes. So with that said, submitting plans. So in Citrus Heights for the last couple of years, and especially during COVID, we have a new process where all of our plan submittals and permitting is online. So we have a citizen access portal there's a link on our homepage of our city website. So very easy to get to. Once you get your plans, whether you decide to go with the pre-approved plans or you have a design professional design them for you, or you opt to do them yourself, you would submit your plans as a PDF attachment in the Citizen Access Portal along with your application. That would start the process. There would be a plan review fee that would be due upon the submittal. That would only be due if you decided to provide the plans yourself or have a design professional prepare them. That plan review fee would not be applicable to the pre-approved plans. Those have already been vetted and approved. So typical plan review fees for an ADU, they vary. For the PRADU plans we have and the square footages, they're going to go between 1,000 to 1,500. So that fee would be fees that you're saving if you go with the PRADU plan. On top of that, if you think about the cost of the design professional, those fees can get up there and climb pretty quick. They can go anywhere from $1,000 up to sometimes over $4,000 to $5,000, depending on how elaborate your design is and how busy and the architect or engineer is, and whether it requires engineering or just architectural. So they can climb pretty quick. So it's a big benefit with these PRADU plans because they, like I said, they are pre-approved, they've been vetted, they're ready to go. So you're saving not only 2 to 4 months in the initial design from your design professional because the plans are already done, but you're also saving thousands of dollars in fees by choosing to go with the PRADU. We talked about the plan check, permit issuance. The permit issuance, once the plans are approved through our Citizen Access Portal, you'll be notified. You'll pay the balance of the permit fee, and then you actually have the ability to print the permit out from your home or office. You could actually take the plans and print them out on a thumb drive, and you would go and have those printed out in full size, like at Kinko's or some other place that has the ability to do that. Let's see, a couple of things I wanted to point out. There's a big difference between ADU and a junior ADU. A junior ADU, obviously you're converting a portion of the existing home into the junior ADU, and it basically communicates with the existing home. They look at that code-wise as kind of just an extension of that home. So with the junior ADU, there's no fire separation required per the building code between the two dwelling units. If it was an ADU that was attached or converted, meaning if it was over 500 square feet and it's attached to the house, it would be considered an ADU, not a junior ADU. If it's an ADU attached to the house, there is a requirement in the code that you would have to provide a complete 1 hour fire separation between those two dwellings. It's looked at the same as separation between apartment units or separation between a duplex. There's a distinct fire separation that's required. So that's something you may want to really consider in your design, whether you're going to be adding on to the existing home to the side of the home, or if you're going to be converting a garage and you have living space above, you have to determine how you're going to accommodate that 1 hour fire separation between a downstairs unit and an upstairs unit. Sometimes it can be a little bit difficult. Sometimes it may be easier to change your design a little bit so you're not wasting money where you don't need to be. You might be able to save it doing it just a little bit different. There's a consideration about swimming pools that isn't talked about a lot with ADUs, with detached ADUs. So let's say you have your single family home, you have a swimming pool, there's pool safety requirements for that swimming pool, which usually involves door alarms for the doors that access the pool, a barrier for the pool area, and sometimes even a pool alarm that detects the water movement in the pool. So you have an existing house with an existing pool that has all the safety features on the existing house. Now you bring in a detached ADU. We meet all the building code requirements for the ADU, but a lot of times what gets forgotten is we've now brought in another dwelling unit with potentially another family into this yard that has a pool. So consider that in your overall design. Make sure that we have those safety barriers and alarms in place to protect your children. And sprinklers, I wanted to cover sprinklers. That's a big question that comes up. Will my ADU require sprinklers? So under the current California code, new single family dwellings do require fire sprinklers, but ADUs do not require fire sprinklers unless the existing primary dwelling has fire sprinklers. So that's pretty straightforward. If your primary dwelling is not currently sprinklered, your ADU, whether it's attached or detached, would not require fire sprinklers.
Great.
I think that was it. Maybe I should touch on the junior ADU kitchen.
Yes, that's a good
Yes,
question.
So efficiency kitchen is a little bit different than a fully functional, well, it is fully functional, but an ADU and a junior ADU, there's a little bit difference in the kitchen. A regular ADU is going to have fully built-in oven, stove, cooking facilities, where a junior ADU is only required to have an efficiency kitchen. Efficiency kitchen is going to have everything a regular kitchen has, except you're not going to have those built-in permanent appliances. You do have to have cabinets and counter space for storage and food prep. You have to have the 110 volt outlets on the counter area so you can plug in those cooking appliances, such as your hot plate, microwave, electric grills, things of that nature. So that's the big difference between the regular kitchen and an efficiency kitchen.
Greg, you touched on one thing about whether or not fire sprinklers are required, but we have a question here about if ADUs require solar or not.
Great question. Yes, they do. So with solar, all in these single family dwellings in the state of California are required to have solar PV systems. The solar PV system for a ADU, it would only apply to a detached ADU. So if it was an attached ADU or a converted junior ADU, it would be based on the primary dwelling. the primary dwelling would already either have solar, or if it did not have solar, it would not trigger the solar for that case. It would only apply to detached ADUs. So the California energy standards is what dictates what size solar PV system that you would be required to put on a ADU. And it's generally really small, typically not too much over 2 kilowatts, which is usually only 3 or 4 modules. So it's very small. It's not real expensive. Typically what we're seeing is ADUs are coming in and designed by a design professional, an architect or an engineer. And what we see on the cover of the plans is that the solar PV system that is required, and it will be noted in your Title 24 calculations. It will note the size that's required, but the plans will be marked that the PV system will be under a separate permit by a separate contractor. And that is what we normally see. We have seen some plans come in that actually were complete and included the entire PV system. You can do it either way. Either way works for us, as long as we get that in the overall design.
And Greg, we had one other question, and this is fairly pertinent, I think, for a lot of properties. It's about converting existing ADUs that were previously unpermitted. Is there a process that allows for that ADU to become permitted, or how does that work now?
Certainly. When that happens, we're trying to permit something that is already built, basically. The design and the construction documents are basically the same as if you were proposing to do it new. The only difference is you're going to be drawing and putting down on paper what's there. And we would review that to make sure that it does comply with structurally and fire life safety. A design professional would actually look at what's there, and if there was something deficient, they would probably know it, and they would put it in the plans to revise it or improve it so it does meet the code. But basically the plan process and the review process is the same. But with it already being built, you're just trying to determine what's there and how it was built and put it on paper. But yes, it can be done. It's done every day.
Thank you. There's a lot to the permit process. Seems overwhelming, but I know that Greg's a great resource and the building department's a great resource. It's not as overwhelming as it appears, but I see the advantage of having the design professional walk you through it or do that process for you.
Yeah. And can I add one more thing to that question that he asked about the existing ADU that was non-permitted? If the homeowner or the customer comes into us and brings that to our attention, a lot of people are afraid to do that because they think that they're going to get fined or pay an exorbitant investigation fee if we find out that this is the case. We do not operate that way. If you had something like that you submitted and said, hey, we bought the house this way, or my dad did it 20 years ago, we want to make it legal, we're not going to automatically double fee the project or charge any violation fees. That typically only applies if something happens and you receive a violation while you're in the progress of building something without a permit, something of that nature, but not when you come to us trying to make something legal. We're going to work with you every way we can.
Great. Thank you, Greg.
You're welcome.
I'm sure there'll be a lot more questions as we move along on permits. All right, so our next poll, after what you've heard so far tonight, let's talk about what part of this process is seeming the most intimidating to you. Is it coming up with a design, making sure that you choose a design or have one design that fits your current needs as well as future needs? Maybe hiring a reliable contractor or designer is a little bit intimidating to you. Maybe it's the permit process, maybe it's coming up with the financing, or maybe it's just all of it. Just give us your thoughts on what is the most intimidating process so far.
We should have had an option for none of it. Like maybe there's some experts in the audience that just feel like this is going to be breezy.
I like your thinking.
All right, looks like we still have votes rolling in, so we'll give everyone a few more seconds to weigh in.
Just so the audience knows, I see you have a lot of questions about the PRADU program, and that's coming up really quick, and we'll answer those questions during the time.
Oh, interesting. I didn't really know how this one was going to turn out, but hiring a reliable contractor, that's come out to be the number one. That's very interesting. Greg, give us some tips that we share with the audience, you know, your expertise, or maybe Sean or either of you can jump in on this one. What are some steps someone can take to ease that intimidation or find the right person?
I could answer that. First, you take a deep breath. But what I always tell everybody, we have a lot of handouts and information from the CSLB to check licenses for not only the contractors, but you could ask around about the design professionals. Ask them for references. You know, it's a professional service. So as you may know, it's not an inexpensive service. So ask around. If you can't get references from anybody you know, you can actually ask the contractor, you could ask the architect, you could ask the engineer for some references of projects that they've worked with. Talk to the people they've worked with. That goes a long ways, and that will ease your mind a lot in the process of the design and the construction.
Greg, we had a question if the city maintains a list of approved or accredited contractors.
We do not, but the CSLB, the State Contractors License Board, does, and we have access to their website to check the current status of those contractors' licenses. So we'd be happy to look those up, and that is public information, and every one of you would have that ability as well. If you log on to the CSLB website, you can check their license status, and if I believe it even tells you if they have complaints. I don't think they elaborate on the complaints, but it would tell you if they're insured and current with their license.
Great, thanks, Greg. And then we had one other question. Can we defer the solar design permit? Oftentimes it's installed at the end of the project.
Absolutely. We do need to have something on the initial construction drawings that are submitted that either tells us that those PV plans will be either deferred or they will be under a separate permit. Either way, the PV system would have to be installed and completed before we can final the project, but that's usually not an issue.
Thanks, Greg.
All right, now we're going to get into what Casey talks about. We've touched on it a little bit throughout this presentation, and that's really this permit-ready accessory dwelling units. So for all the stuff we've talked about, this program will help relieve some of the angst that might come along when deciding to do an accessory dwelling unit. I'm very excited to roll this program out and offer it to our community. So let's get right into the permit-ready program. So we call it PRADU. That you've heard us talk about that a little bit tonight. We have to have an acronym. So PRADU for Permit-Ready Accessory Dwelling Unit. We have created this program using some grant funds that the city received from the state of California. The state wanted cities and local governments to look for ways to promote affordable housing, to shorten the time that it takes for housing to be constructed. And this is a program that, it's not unique to Citrus Heights. We are one of the first ones in our area to have it, but certainly not only in Citrus Heights. Other jurisdictions are doing it as well. But it is this permit-ready program. It does provide access to pre-approved, pre-designed accessory dwelling units, saving you time because you don't need to go out and hire a designer. You don't have to come up with designs, the floor plans, or the construction drawings. We have done that for you. So you're not only saving that time, but some significant cost savings because we have essentially paid for that to be done for you. We did touch a little bit earlier on fee exemptions through that legislation from the state of California. They have exempted impact fees for accessory dwelling units that are under 750 square feet. So impact fees are collected when a building permit is issued for a residential unit. There are some also collected for commercial, but tonight we're specifically talking about residential. They are impact fees that are collected for fire, they're collected for parks, they're collected for school fees, drainage fees, road fees. So there's a variety of impact fees that are placed on a residential permit. So when you submit for a residential unit, you're paying the plan review fee, you're paying the permit fee, and when we are also collecting impact fees. Through this program, all these units qualify for that capped level at the state and receive a fee exemption and we will not be collecting impact fees. That's about $2,600 per unit that would typically be collected that are your savings. And as mentioned, we've already plan checked these plans. Greg has already vetted them, has already put his stamp of approval on them. So they don't need to go through plan review. So we're not going to have you pay for that, which is going to be $1,000, $1,300 or so, depending on the unit. So there's two fees right off the top that you're saving if you're going to use our Permit Ready program. And then so what you would be paying us is just the basic building permit fee, the standard building permit fee that someone would pay to build a unit. And we have 3 different floor plans available, and calculating those permit fees out, they're going to range from about $1,600 to $2,000. So that would be what you should expect to pay for your building permit should you use a Permit Ready plan.
Ali, we had a question about, is there a cost for blueprints and permits? I think you already touched on the permits, but what about getting the blueprints from us?
Nope, those plans, once you look at the catalog and you decide what model you want, you're going to prepare your site plan. You're going to do your site evaluation. You will have to have your site plan drawn that touches on all the requirements that we talked about earlier and shows where that unit is going to sit. You're going to submit that site plan and say, this site plan is for the Poppy model, and then we're going to review it. And then when you pick up your permit, we're going to give you those construction drawings and your permit. So there is no cost for those plans. The cost would only be from if you want, you're going to get those plans electronically. So then you will take them and get them printed out should you choose.
And speaking of site plan, does the city have an assistance program to help prepare site plans or any advice on that?
We don't have a program to help you with site plans besides answering your questions. That is something that your contractor should be able to help you with. It is really encouraging that you spend the time and prepare your site plan. You can draw it yourself. It's just something you would draw to scale. You would show your property lines, your existing home. You're going to show where any trees are, where any environmental concerns may be. You're going to show your access to the new unit. So basically an overhead shot of what your property looks like and then include the footprint of the new unit. So you certainly can do it yourself, but your contractor certainly could also do that for you as well.
And is there an average cost to put a site plan together?
A couple inquiries that I made to different firms, engineering firms, to do that. You're probably looking at about $1,200, $1,300, $1,400 if you wanted an engineer to prepare that for you. Just from my side of the fence, I think it's a wise investment because you certainly don't want to get started on a construction project and have your unit in the wrong location. So it is a key piece to getting started in the right direction, but certainly not required. But you can have it done professionally. All right. So I'm happy to introduce now Sean Jackson, who's with us tonight. He's the president of Jackson & Sands Engineering. They're located in Chico, and they're the firm that the city selected to create the plans. He's actually done this for other jurisdictions, so he's got great experience. And I'm going to have him walk through the plans that are available and some of the design features and the choices that you have should you select one of the Permit Ready plans. So Sean, thank you for being with us tonight, all the way from Chico.
Excellent. Thank you for having me. So the designs we completed include a 1-bedroom, 1-bath unit that's 496 square feet. a 1-bedroom, 1-bath unit at 599 square feet and a 2-bedroom, 1-bath unit at 749 square feet. When we completed these designs, we focused on the space management, universal design considerations, and natural lighting. When we took into, so by taking into the account universal design considerations, we left the doorways and hallways wider, increased the size of the bathrooms. The kitchens and bedrooms are laid out to better accommodate wheelchair access. So some of the designs we included additional windows for better visibility and more natural lighting. That's the shed roof designs, which we'll get to here in a moment. They have taller walls on one side of the building. All the designs have a 9-foot standard plate height, and then those shed roofs go up to about 12 foot on the high side. And one other item to note with the designs in general is they are all designed with a slab on grade floor and hand cut roof. So that hand cut roof saves you the time and effort of working with a truss manufacturer and waiting on their timelines. You can get going right away.
Thank you. All right, let's go into show the plans here.
Yeah.
All right, this is the first one. Looks like it's 496 square feet. Talk about the magnolia, the mariposa, and the maple.
Yeah, so these floor plans, these ones are the 496, 1-bedroom, 1-bath. Here we show a few different kind of exterior features you can do to change it up with the standard gable end roof. This particular design has a nice open front part to it with the living room and kitchen, and then the bedroom and bathroom being in the back. Plus it has a great front porch. If we go to the next one. So this one has the exact same floor plan, same layout, except with what we're calling the shed roof. So this one has added windows, gives it a more open feel when you walk into it. And overall, this floor plan is 16 foot wide. It's a nice rectangle, easy to build, fits nicely on a narrower lot.
This is the Tupelo and the Poppy. All right, now it looks like these are a little bit larger units.
Yeah, so these ones are the 599 square foot, 1-bedroom, 1-bath. So what we've done is increase the bedroom size, the bathroom size, and largely increase the kitchen and living room size. Instead of feeling as one room as the 496 square footers, the kitchen and living area definitely feel more separated in that the space between them or around them, you have a lot more room, a lot more storage within these units. And this floor plan has multiple different types of roof lines to it, roof pitches. So this particular one is, again, what we're calling the shed style. And the shed roof has a pergola, uncovered porch, as you can see here. Next one, please. This one has your nice, easy gable roof going all the way across. That produces a covered porch.
So this is the same floor plan as the previous ones, just utilizing a different roof style to give it a completely different look.
Yes. Yes.
Both at 599 square feet.
And then the next one is also 599. And this again has the same exact floor plan, just a different style roof yet again. And again, this one has the pergola, so it's an uncovered front porch, but all three look drastically different with the varying roof plans. So you have a lot of options as you go through and choose your siding, your roof layout, and various window treatments. And then the next one. Yeah, so this is the largest, 749 square foot. It's a 2-bedroom, 1-bath unit. This plan set the pine and the oak. The pine has the straight gable roof, and the oak is a hipped roof. And what you can't see from here is this plan includes a covered back porch as well. So that's a great area to store your barbecue, your kayaks, your bicycles, whatever you have. Really a nice addition to the ADU, giving you a little more privacy in the back as well. And the next one. So this is the exact same floor plan as the previous two, except this one has the shed roof again. So more added windows, more natural lighting, more of that modern style look and feel to it.
Great, thank you. And I did want to mention, or Sean, you could maybe talk about this a little bit. So we have 3 different floor plans, 3 different square footages available, but with the different roof features and siding options, there's 13 plans available. In addition, the plans are also available in reverse model. So talk about that a little bit, of what that means.
Yeah, so the reverse model is just a mirrored image. It helps give you flexibility on a particular lot, whether you want the front door on the left-hand side like this one shows, or if you're going to mirror the whole building over, and the front door would be on the right-hand side. And so it would just be a direct mirror. If we're looking at this layout here, on the right-hand side, you see a small section that is a gable roof over it. Well, that would wind up being on the left-hand side. But it really allows, as you rotate this unit 90 degrees, 180 degrees, as you rotate it around your property, you might need to flip it, mirror it to really accommodate where you want your entrance to land or where you want the windows to be looking out. So it really offers a lot more flexibility.
Speaking of flexibility, Allison, we have a number of questions about can the pre-approved ADUs be altered at all if you add skylights or make changes to materials or anything like that? How does that work?
Greg or Sean, you want to capture that comment?
Yeah, I can touch on some of that and let Greg jump in with the rest of it at least. So these plans, we have completed the energy calculations for the plans as they are. So if we add skylights or change window sizes, not only is that going to potentially change something structurally, but it would change the energy calcs. And so that would lead to potential changes to the plans. Greg, you want to take the rest of that?
Sure. Yeah, you're absolutely right. A lot of times one thing affects another. It's not always that simple, but yes, some revisions can be done on a very small scale with the existing plans, depending on what they are. If it's really changing the plan structurally or, changing the count of the windows or size of the windows or something with altering the lighting or the ventilation, we would have to look at it and do a revision. It is possible to do that. We do that all the time. Revisions, if submitted, depending on what they are, if they're small in nature, we can get those in and out, and possibly there may not even be any fees associated with it. If it's something that is going to be structural or requires us to review the energy calcs or the green building standards, then there may be some fees associated with that. And it's usually just charged on an hourly rate for the time that we spent for the review. Now, as far as a structural change, I would imagine since these plans are copyrighted and provided by Jackson Sands, that any changes to those plans would have to go through them, and you can take that, Sean.
Yeah, so definitely with those types of changes, if we're talking more than the minor changes that Citrus Heights can take care of, then yes, we'd be happy to take a look at it. And again, those changes would be handled at an hourly rate from our end as well.
Thank you.
There was another question actually to piggyback off this a little bit. The plans that are available, are there any model homes already constructed that could potentially be walked through?
No, but we want someone to be the first. These plans have only been out less than a month. So we're very excited for the program and really are looking for our first one. And as you obtain a permit for this, we are going to be asking you if we can kind of follow you along and take some photos so we can share with others. We figure that's how we learn and get the message out, is by really showing these in the world, in the place. So in Citrus Heights, there are not any of these units built. But as I mentioned, Sean, you've done these for other communities. Are there some under construction in other areas?
Yeah, so we've got very similar designs in the city of Chico. Many units are under construction right now. I haven't heard how many are completed, if any, yet. I do believe there are a few. City of Chico was working on putting together a video series of touring some of those completed homes.
Great. Thank you, Sean.
You bet.
So just to touch real quick, we saw this graphic earlier about the steps that you go through for accessory move in. And by using these permit ready plans, I just want to show you that some of those steps go away. So you no longer have the pre-design work. We have done that for you. You don't have the plan review work. We have done that for you. And the pre-design work essentially has been done. You don't need to go out and interview and select an architect or a designer. We have done that. I didn't give it a full check mark. I gave it half check mark because I still want you to do your due diligence, talk to contractors and things like that. But as far as the design of the plans, you no longer have to do that. We have done that for you, and we've eliminated the need for plan review and for that coming up with the design. So you really, out of the meat of this whole process, you've taken some pretty significant steps out.
I also made a couple other questions while you're pulling up this poll. Is it possible to get a materials list to determine cost to help determine if it's an option for us?
We can give the floor plans out. The plans, as we mentioned, are copyrighted, so we don't give the construction details in advance, except when you issue the permit. But what we do give you should be plenty, all the information you need for your contractor to develop their cost.
Okay, and then there's a question about HVAC. Is that included as part of the PRADU, and what type of units are proposed or can be installed as part of that?
Yeah, if I remember right, the HVAC units that we ran in the energy calcs were all mini splits for this system, or for these units.
Answer that question. So the HVAC is considered in the Title 24 calculations that are required. So the plans will give the minimum standards that have to be met for the Title 24 compliance. Okay, so let's go into our poll real quickly. So is this permit ready program something that you're considering? You think it will fit your needs? You see an advantage? Or no, the designs just don't seem to look like what you're looking for, and then you're not sure, you're still doing your due diligence. So just a quick poll there on what you think of the permit ready program.
Allison, while the poll's going on, we had a question. If someone were to hire their own design professional for a 749 square feet or less ADU, do the credits for impact fees apply as well?
Yes, great question. So those exemptions apply to any accessory dwelling unit under that 750 cap. So whether you're doing it yourself or using our plans, you are qualified for that fee exemption.
And if the PRADU plans do not agree with the desire of the owner and the property, can a free approved plan from another jurisdiction be used? Do the fees still apply?
So the plans, as long as you have access to the plans and they have all their appropriate stamps, you can submit them for plan review. You will have to pay plan check fees. They won't be the free plan check like these have already been done, but yes, you can submit them for construction drawings as long as they have all the required information that would normally be on a construction plans. I don't know if I said that clear, but Greg, help me out if I stumbled over that too much.
Yeah, so the plan check fees would apply to that plan, even though they may have been pre-approved by another jurisdiction. There is quite a few things that change the plan design, specifically for energy and for structural, based on where that building is located at within the region. So there's different things to consider. I mean, there's differences between Citrus Heights and Roseville. And when you go farther apart, there's differences in the structural design category, seismic design category, and you're in different climate zones. So yeah, there's different things to consider that we need to look at. But you'd definitely be a step ahead of the game. If it's been reviewed and approved by another jurisdiction, chances are you're going to be very, very close.
Great. Oh, I like this poll results. 53% of you think this program fits your needs. So that's great news. I know it's not going to fit every property, but when we selected Jackson and Sands, we really felt that these plans blended with, a large part of our community. They fit well with designs that already exist in the community. And the floor plans were great and compact, providing as much accessible space inside as we can in the smaller footprint. So glad to see that. All right, so we move into considerations here and just kind of recap, and these are things that aren't regulations or anything, but just stuff for you to think about in your due diligence period. Spend some time thinking about what your immediate and future housing needs are. We talked a little bit about that. Are you going to start with maybe a studio, something you can add on to later, or you just need to build, a 2-bedroom unit now? Kind of think about those type of options. Know what is allowed. Know that, it doesn't have to be owner occupied, but it cannot be used for short-term rental. Know that you will not be able to sell it separately. It will always be part of your property. And if you are considering a financial investment for it to be a rental, understand that you do then become a landlord and you have responsibilities, and then your renter has their protections too. So that's something to keep in mind. If you want to build this for renter, you've now changed your position to be a landlord. So just understand that. Investigate your likely property tax increase. We do pay property taxes on the value, and any building permits issued on your property are notified to Sacramento County Assessor's Office, who may increase your property taxes. They do have a great calculator on their website, so you can input some information and it will give you a good estimation of how those property taxes will increase. Also something, to consider, check with your homeowner's insurance provider and let them know about your project, what you're considering, and if there's any thing that you should be aware of from them. Some insurance providers do not cover accessory dwelling units, so you may have to change providers. So just some additional due diligence. And then can't talk about it enough, but your site planning and your site evaluation is so important. Not only think about the footprint and where it's going to be, but think about the living conditions, the privacy for not only the person living in the ADU, but the person who lives in the main house, and then the neighbors. Think about, the privacy. And then the outdoor living space. Sean brought up the great example of the one unit that had the back patio. Provides a great barbecue space. You know, this is California, and if you live in a small unit, you may need to get out and get some fresh air. So think about where you put this unit and how the tenants of that unit can walk out the door and enjoy some fresh air. So think about where porches and patios, or how that unit may be facing to accommodate some outdoor living. Briefly going to talk about financing because none of us are experts in this field, but just some tips that we've come across in working with people and what we have learned. So you want to investigate how you're going to finance the unit. The most common ways are the home equity lines of credit or some cash out refis. This has changed over time. It was a couple years ago, you could not do that to construct an ADU. Just the large banks had not caught up to this trend, but that is changing. We're seeing a lot more options available for that. So do talk to your lender and your banking professionals that you deal with and learn what options they have, whether it is the home equity line of credit, the cash out, maybe they have a construction loan or renovation loan. Those come with different things and different payback amounts. So just look at all those different options, kind of create a list of, you know, of choices and choose your best method. Many people are having to finance these through 401k loans, using credit cards, private money from family. Maybe your parents or children are going to live in it and they can pitch in and help pay for it. Talk about your options, you know, talk up to the different lenders, shop around, and then, you know, always when you're doing any construction project, make sure and include a small contingency. We don't want to get you through this process and under construction and have an unforeseen cost stop your project. So contingency is always good to have. Everyone wants to know the permit cost, probably is the last big question that you're seeing. So go over those briefly. And these are just examples. They're certainly not hard, fast, but they're the best information that I could come up with. If you go online, there's many calculators that you can find online for ADUs. In this particular example, I used what we use here as an industry standard, and I compared it to an online calculator that I found for Placer County. So they're not the same as Sacramento County, but they're very similar. And so I thought the numbers made sense. So running through the size, square footage is available in the permit ready program, and then building one of 1,000 square feet, you can see the variables. So your hard cost numbers are your construction costs, what it's going to cost to put that unit on the ground. You have to accommodate for your soft costs, which are going to be your insurance, your taxes, things like that that aren't really related to the construction, but are part of the project. So taxes, insurance, your design costs, things like that are considered your soft costs. And then your fees, and these are fees that you pay to us, being the jurisdiction for your permit, and then giving you the total. So you can see they range from 77,000, you know, up to 135,000. As I mentioned, you know, those numbers these are just general numbers. They can vary depending on, you know, features you add or enhance or change, but just to give you some idea. What I wanted to point out are the fees that are shown here are as if you were building it yourself and not using the permit ready program. So that fee column would be reduced by the plan check fee significantly, because you wouldn't be paying that. So that would be less if you're using the permit ready program. The hard costs would, you know, be about the same. The soft costs would also be reduced. Don't know what that number would be, but you can generally think you'd be paying, you know, $6,000 or so to have plans prepared. So you would not be paying that because if you use the permit ready program, because those plans are already done. So there's a couple lower figures that you could accommodate if you use the permit ready program. And then the other thing to point out is if you go up to 1,000 square foot unit, so you want a larger unit, you can see the significant difference in the fees as it jumps from the 7,449 square foot unit all the way up to $10,000. And those fees are related to, you don't get the fee exemptions because it is over the 750 square feet. So you lose those fee exemptions, as well as you also lose the exemption the main one is school fees, which are over $4 a square foot. So you're going to be paying the school fee price of $4 a square foot when you build a unit larger than 750 square feet. So that can significantly jump up your price. So that's just for demonstration purposes to show you what a savings, you can see if you keep your unit under 750 square feet.
We had a question, Ali, about what are hard costs. Is it just materials typically, or what does that include typically?
Yeah, it'd be your materials and your labor, your construction to build that unit. Materials is pretty hard to judge right now. We've all heard about the lumber costs have really fluctuated over the past pandemic. So that is up in the air, but lumber is kind of at a high right now. Hopefully it's going to be coming down, but that would be your construction materials and labor costs.
Ali, I know sometimes when we are recommending people that get bids, we recommend getting several. Is there a rule of thumb for that?
I always say 3, but that's just my own number. Greg, what do you say?
Yeah, that's the standard, at least 3.
Yeah. And we found that most contractors, and correct me if I'm wrong, Greg, they should be able to take like the permit ready plans, and they can look at the floor plan. It shows the construction, enough information for a contractor should be able to give you a per square foot bid type or basic price for the construction. You don't need the specific materials list. Have you found that true, Greg?
That's true. Yes, everything's there's enough information on the floor plan. They know what the wall construction, floor construction, and what everything consists of, and what equipment and electricals in there. It's pretty basic. Yeah.
Speaking of construction, Greg, Kelly asked, can you build it yourself as long as everything is built to code and pass all inspections, or does it have to be built by a licensed contractor?
You could absolutely do it yourself. You could obtain the permits yourself. You can do all the work yourself. That's very, very common, and hopefully you save a lot of money doing it.
You still require inspections.
Yeah. Oh, yes.
One last question, Greg, is Spencer asked, I would like to add additional living space to my garage. Is it more cost effective to add a 1-bedroom, 1-bath to my garage, or to add an ADU, or is there much of a difference?
If the question is converting part of the garage into that bedroom versus adding on, the cost would be substantially less to convert an existing part of the house or an existing part of the garage, because the main structure, the floor and the foundation are already there. So you save a lot of cost in the structural aspect of it. You're just doing some modifications and then installing the finishes such as electrical, plumbing, flooring, things of that nature.
That's all of our open questions. Thank you.
Great. So we're going to wrap it up here. Thank you, everyone. And just to close out with some tips. There's a lot of information available online. AARP has a great workbook. The state's Housing and Community Development has a great resource too. They have a lot of public information catalogs. They have a great resource on getting financing. There's some books. Coy Peterson is one that's written several books that are very informative. There's books, webinars such as this, Facebook groups, your internet searches, and use the Permit Ready program. Consider that and save some money. As someone else mentioned, there are other builders that offer pre-designs. That's certainly an option as well. You would save from having to have a design made specific to you, but if ours were not fitting, you can use other designers. I just like to mention, like Greg did, we don't buy anything else unless you know that they're going to meet our codes. Sometimes people buy things offline, but it may be built in Michigan. So it doesn't meet our codes, or it may be overbuilt because we don't have 4 feet of snow on the roof. So just be cognizant when you're looking at buying some plans offline. Meet with contractors. We talked about, meeting with 3 different contractors, and find one that you have a good rapport with. You need to work with them, for a few months through the project. So you want to feel comfortable with them and reference check them on the California State Licensing Board. contractor state licensing board, talk to your lenders, and try to stay under the 749 square feet if you can to save money.
Ellie, one last question came in. How long will the PRADU program be available? They're concerned it may take a while to figure out the financing.
It is here to stay. It is not only for a certain time frame. So we have acquired the plans and they're here, and we will keep them updated as codes change as well. So every time if you use the program, this year, next year, it will still meet the current codes. We'll keep them fresh and up to date.
Allie, can I tag onto your tips?
Yeah.
So I wanted to just throw out there for those of you that may be thinking about doing the design yourself, or even if it's just a site plan. There was a question about doing the site plan yourself. Please visit our website, city website, go to the building department, the building division. There's quite a few handouts and samples. I have sample floor plans and sample plot plan and site plan that you could use for reference. It kind of shows you what information we're looking for that needs to be on that site plan. I also have the plan submittal requirements for residential projects. That's pretty detailed. The plan submittal requirement checklist spells out everything that's supposed to be on each plan. It spells out information that's supposed to be on the site plan, tells you what the minimum scale is. Same thing with the floor plan and the roof framing plan. It's all there. And another thing that I've helped folks out with that we're trying to do a simple plan and do it themselves, excuse me, is there is graph paper, large size graph paper that you can buy at most any office supply place. They have it in 1/8 inch scale and 1/4 inch scale. So between graph paper and a ruler, it's pretty simple to at least do the site plan. And we can help you out with the parcel dimensions. We do have parcel maps, and we'll give you those lot line dimensions. That's like gives you an area to start. If you know what the lot line dimensions are in the shape and you have the graph paper, it's not that difficult to put that information down on paper, and the samples that we have will kind of show you what other information is supposed to be on that site plan. So visit our website, it's helpful.
Great information, Greg, thank you. And so just to wrap up, before we close, as we mentioned, we have a website, citrusheights.net. If you go to /ADU Central, you'll find all the information that we talked about tonight. It's available in our new homeowners planning guide that you can download online. You can read it online, or if you're like me, you like to print it and have it in hand, you certainly can do that. It's about 14 or 15 pages, and it covers much of what we talked about tonight. So that is on there. Sign up to receive city news in your email, because as things change and programs change and we have new enhancements, that will be sent to you electronically. So you don't have to always come back to the website and check. We'll send you a reminder. You can email us at planning@citrusheights.net. The ADU Central too, I did want to talk about, there's a couple of videos on there that we just released. There's an FAQ video on ADUs itself, and then one on the Permit Ready program. So if you'd like to get your information in video form, that is available as well. And then we want to hear your stories and pictures. And if you go through the program or you do it yourself, whatever you choose, share with us your stories and how your project's going. We love to follow you and get to know you and learn about your project to help others. So that is all I have. I really appreciate everyone for joining us tonight. I think we went a little bit long. Hopefully we answered all your questions. But as mentioned earlier, you will receive a video copy of this. And then if you have anything that didn't get answered, happy to have you reach out to us at planning@citrusheights.net, and we'll follow up with you directly. Thank you all my colleagues tonight for joining us, and Sean from Jackson and Sands Engineering, Greg, Eric, Casey, and Nicole, thank you for being a great host and helping us put this together. And I don't have anything more. Does anyone have anything else to wrap up or any final questions before we close out? No?
I think that's it. So like everyone said, we'll have a recording of this available online. So you can share it with any neighbors that might be interested in the program too. And Allie, you thanked everyone else. So I feel like we got to end with thanking you. This project is so exciting for our city. It means a lot that you applied and got this grant funding to put this program out to our community, especially the permit ready portion of it. So more to come. Check out the ADU Central website. And thank you so much, everyone who joined us this evening. Good night.